and kind of to jog people a little bit. So this is a curve from 1970 to 2008, the dots of the death rate from what's called accidental poisoning from medication. And what it really translates into is narcotic pills use. And this number, you know, it's really shot up. This was about the time the big push to treat pain well happened. And why you got to fill out this goofy pain score and other things, not to set a prejudice on it. This is now at about 22,000 deaths per year, which is approaching car accident death rates. And it's probably a crisis. And when we're talking about instruments and devices, maybe, you know, put a little wireless thing on the cap of the narcotic pill bottle, you know, and send someone out when they've opened it too many times in one day to back off, because these drugs have a very narrow therapeutic margin in terms of putting people to sleep forever. So these are mostly out of the office. These are not prescribing errors, despite the fact they were announced that way in the IOM report. The 7,000 deaths is somewhere down in here. And well, it's a long story, but a Lancet article talked about it, saying this is prescribing errors. A 4-page letter to the editor in Lancet, to a big letter to the editor, pointed out that the age group was men from 20 to 40, the drug abuser, blah, 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 went on, and said, and then pointed out this thing isn't called prescribing errors, it's called accidental poisonings from medicine. But anyway, so there are some opportunities, I think, with machinery and technology, maybe to keep track of how people are using their narcotics, or whether it's being used in spaces and places that's not where, say, the parent, you know, kids steal them, and that's another thing that happens with narcotics. So
the seriousness of the underlying pathology worked into the...
This is not cancer deaths. They stopped, this is the peak is like 38 or something like that. And there's hardly any in the older age groups. It falls way back off.
When does oxycodone come on the market?
That's another, that might be some relationship to it. But anyway, so those with the instruments and devices, this could be a big health, you know, saving thing if you could figure out a way to keep that bottle closed or count the actual pills going out and send a radio message and say, grab this guy and give him some oxygen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about personal records, the background, just give some, give some background. So a PHR to me is just another electronic medical record with different kind of controls and access and maybe different kinds of contents, but there's a lot of difference in command and control of the data flows. And I want to point out there's really 3 different kinds, and they get mixed together and they have different properties and realities. So there's what I call a portal PHRs, which are really a medical record system from an institution opened up, some parts of it opened up to the patient. And that really is the most common one, and is the one that's probably, and is used fairly well in a lot of places now. There's a standalone PHR, which actually what NLM is built, which the patient puts the stuff in and no one else can look at it, and they don't have to give it to the doctor, and they can put it in from every place. So the portals typically are restricted to the one institution, and they typically don't encourage data entry of anything from the patient. There's some exceptions to that. And there's what I'm calling linking PHRs, who are really Microsoft and Google sort of, and as Google was. They are both bringing data in from a lot of source places, and they're being a PHR themselves, by themselves. But there's some big problems. So portals are easy and good, but usually incomplete. Standalones are sort of easy, but burdensome on the patient. And the linkers are the best if done right, but they're the most difficult. So the portals, I think I've already said this, they often provide additional services which are really not related to the data content. Like they'll do medication refills, emails to the doctors, offer other services, scheduling, for example. And those are often the most popular. The real barriers, there's real barriers, though, about entering data into these health information systems that are owned by the hospital or the doctors, because the doctors are terrified of that stuff, it turns out. I mean, I've had some people just go, my God, you know, if that comes flowing in the middle of the night and I haven't read it, I'm going to get sued and blah, blah, blah. So there's some really fears. And there's also some people we mentioned before, you know, someone mentioned, I think, what they ate every day for the last 10 years. You know, you'd have to take a year off, you know, to read through it. So there's some issues there. So that's the reason I think it's uncommon for organizations to accept electronic flows of external data. We talked about that already, and we talked about Microsoft and Google. Google's quitting the business, and this is some quotes on it. The feeling is that if Google couldn't make it work with their user base, who could? said this guy who's a chief technology officer somewhere. And then the other quote was, for a week after seeing the doctor, they are interested in the results and what the docs think. The next time they're interested is much later when they go back to the doctor. By that time, they've forgotten their password. So there's some problems with sort of the intensity of the interactions with them. The linker's big challenge, this is a challenge of a lot of healthcare, is a lot of them are just shoeboxes. Microsoft's, except for certain categories, is a shoebox. You put in your report and you read out the report. It doesn't have any content structure knowledge, and it doesn't relate to the same data from another report. And that's a big, tough problem. The authentication is another problem in that, let's say I'm a big hospital or I'm on a health information exchange and I want to let everybody use the content as a PHR. And Joe Blow signs in and says, I want to see my record. Or maybe it's Clinton signs in and says, I want to see my record. But you don't really know for sure that's Clinton. There's some big challenges in this authentication thing when you get beyond a certain scale. You can do it if the patient comes in the hospital, gets their own password and ID, goes home and uses that to get in, but then they're going to have 20 passwords and IDs. Pardon?
What does Mint.com do?
Mint?
Oh, so similar things in the financial space.
Financial space is, yes, financial space is different. There's two reasons it's different. Number one is you are not you across the financial space. That is you are you if you bring it down to you into your Quicken system, but you are not you. You're an account, and you put the money in. So it's really easy for you. I mean, they don't care about, but when you start taking it out, man, you got to do all kinds of jumping through hoops. So they have a different problem, I think, is the bottom line. Plus, they can quantify the risk. It's money.
I think the other thing is there are fewer data types. I mean, you're really dealing with dollars, and pretty much that's it.
I'm not saying financial and medical is the same. I'm just saying this one little thing about the
You
authenticate separately to each system.
And that's what Google does too, or did too, and Microsoft.
Yeah, they can deal with it. They can deal with it. You go, but
what
it's,
happens with the HIEs is that because they're business partners, they don't require separate authentication by individual users.
but just be aware. There's big problems still with getting data in that's fungible in the context of your content, and there's big problems with authentication. There's some stuff cooking, and there may be some requirements in some of the newer regulations that says everybody can get that will kind of force the issue. The thing called NHIN Direct looks promising, but it's based on sort of local clustering of organizations and using sort of standard email technology with encryption, which it might actually work. I think we talked about all this. So who's providing PHRs? I think it's about everyone. There's got to be 200, 400 of them out there in various forms. Intuit actually has an interesting one, which they get into your business about keeping track of your money related to the healthcare. I'm in the donut hole, and I got to get my drugs right away, or I've got money left over in my savings plan, Medscape. I'm not going to go into the details. I can get you the slides, though. Medicare had 4 of them, and it was almost completely unused in terms of, they weren't very useful, part of it was, and they maybe weren't constructed very well. Indivo is the pioneer. It comes out of Boston with Ken Mandel and Zach Kahane. Patient Like Me is a really interesting system. I don't know whether you call it a PHR, but does everyone know about Patient Like Me? I mean, it's sort of wild. And they got it headed up. His brother died of multiple. Okay. And he tried to save him for 3 years. He invested all his .com money trying to save him. And he's the only person that can counter the emotions of the privacy people who really are very, very hard on some of these kind of systems. So we had a meeting where the privacy person was saying, everybody's been injured by this. She didn't say exactly, we ought to shut it all down. He got up and said, you killed my brother because we couldn't get data. And that kind of is the only force that I've heard that sort of neutralizes the emotion. So who's using PHR? So the California Health Foundation did a survey of 1,800 US adults, and you can get that from the website. It's a big, long report. It said it's a random survey, but they didn't give any details. So I don't really know who they got. And there's some of the statistics were a little surprising if this was really a random sample. But only 7% ever use a PHR. There's no breakdown by type. From the questions they asked, it was mostly portal type questions. So I think they were probably mostly portal people. Well, more than half of the users were positive about looking at test results, renewing prescriptions, email to the MD, and making sure information is correct. We're not crystal clear how they can verify, but I guess they want to make sure there's not bad stuff in there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're trying to do at NLM's PHR, and it's not running yet, so let me get that out in front. So this is sort of the longest running preamble to probably any software developed anywhere. So the interest at NLM's interest in that the delivery of health information to patients is one of their major missions. You know, they got Medline Plus and lots of other things. So there's ways we can deliver that information better through a PHR. I want to learn how people would use PHRs, be a test bed for NLM technologies and EMR technologies, and a potential in the future for maybe using it in clinical trials of various kinds, or helping clinical trials. And so what do we think? Who do we think is the market? It's not going to be every single adult. That's for darn sure. And we think it's going to be mostly the adult who's managing an elder parent or kid's health records. And when I was in practice, which wasn't too long ago, the most common, came in, a daughter comes in with the old father, and she's scribbling like crazy, everything about the drugs and this and that. And you look, she's got erasure marks all over this thing. And I thought we can do better than that for these simple key things that they try to keep up. And things like, when's my next colonoscopy? I don't know if any of you guys are into that business, but was it 3 years ago? Was it 5 years ago? And it'd be nice to have those things in a handy place. So there's some special features of what we developed. We use auto-completion to try to encode all the key names of things, names of the drug, names of the problem, names of the test, etc. It's got one-click access to Medline Plus and a few other websites that are trusted. When you put a problem, you click on a problem, you can get to a website. It reminds patients, we got rules that, are these things going to go off to a lot of places? I can say, huh? I mean, I'm recorded, right? So I won't say certain things then that I was going to say. We have some rules that are inhibit. Huh? Yeah. Well, I won't go into that. But anyway, everyone doesn't love the idea that we have rules that are suggesting things that patients should do, because that might be practicing medicine. And these are all the regular preventive care kind of things that are sort of, cookbook, and they're not really that hard. But it does those reminders, and it provides easy ways to generate input forms of almost any kind. So you can generate them on the fly if you put them in this one little database structure. And that's how we thought maybe the researchers might like it too. It's got reminders. I don't know if you can read these, but ZOS shingles vaccine, this patient, it's actually Daisy Duck, is the one we've got the most data on. And we've set it up so she needs everything. Shingles vaccine, colon cancer, high cholesterol warning, cervical cancer. And these all have a link to the place that knows the most about it. So these are the CDC patient packages for these various things. And you can say there's more text if you want to see more just on the surface without having to go further. The way we enter drugs, I'm not going to try to do a demo. I'm just going to give you a sense of it. These are the buttons that you click on to learn more about Lasix. There's a whole bunch of tables on the form. There's the things that are old. I mean, you put in a previous session are not accessible. You cursor down, you get to here for the next empty space to put a new one in. You have to click on these to make changes to them. You go across the drugs, you get the kind of doses that are available. It uses NLM supported codes systems everywhere. So this is RX norm. These are all the drugs and all the pill sizes on the market for thyroxine, which happens to have a lot of pill sizes. It uses LINK for labs and measurements. It uses CVX, which is not an NLM supported one, but that's for vaccines, for the vaccine codes and recording all that stuff. As you click on this thing and you pop up Medline Plus, and it's pretty snappy. There's drug warnings when you're doing duplicate prescription, and there's like 6 cases. And we had a speaker at NLM who described her mother who was never taking her medicines right. So she kind of got sick, she had heart failure. They brought her home. Her brother took care of her, and he made sure she took all her medicines. And she blacked out, had to be brought back to the hospital in the ambulance because she was taking 3 forms of Lasix from 3 different doctors with different names on them, furosemide, Lasix, etc. So this will tell them about that. This is one of the arbitrary input forms, and we got a lot of sort of personal data collection input forms. This one is keeping track of your exercise, what it is, how long you went, and if the machine gives you calories or something like that, you can put that in. There's flow sheets, so anything you put in that has temporal characteristics to it can be shown as a flow sheet. And these are spark graphs, everybody heard of those? Those are little teeny graphs that are about the size of fonts, but with today's really high-resolution printers and high-resolution screens, you can see a lot. And that's, the yellow is the normal range, and you can kind of see this person is doing more exercise and their blood pressure is kind of going down as they're getting more exercise. We fake that. We don't know if that would really happen. And then if you want to click on the, you can click on the graph and get a big one and you can do things with it. So I think I've got to reminders right. So our objective with this thing is to, we will describe this to the person who signs up, that we will do research on it, but it'll be totally de-identified data. And we want to know how they use the system, usability, users' reactions to reminders, their use of informational resources, their problems with the interface, and various kind of things. And we'll take complaints and positive remarks from users who spontaneously enter them. We're still working through all the rules about being able to do a questionnaire at intervals, because there's rules against that from OMB. And what we're now negotiating with the suburban hospital next door to us, whom we've had great relations with, done a lot of projects with, but they now are run by Johns Hopkins, and it's a little more complicated. And so we've had now 8 months of discussion with lawyers, and it was really getting better and better and better, and now notched up to be a little worse, but I think we still see a pathway. And we just got an offer from a university in the DC area that they'd host it if this doesn't work out. So we're looking forward to letting people try it out.
Will it auto-populate from the medical record?
No.
Not even
Well, that's the whole problem. We could, we work with one hospital, we could pull data, we could do the work, do the mappings, and store it. But if we're going to take data from everywhere, it comes in as spam. I mean, there's not enough people. Now it's getting much better. The codes are getting better.
That was a part of your relationship with the new hospital.
Well, the new place is the university that doesn't have a hospital. the third place. I mean, no, Suburban is a hospital.
That's an easy one to work with.
But if you chose to do that interface with Suburban, that would add months onto your project.
Right, we're going to start this way, and we'll get some experience with it. We'll be nearby. We can kind of figure things out about it. But they're allowing us to. The idea was, at least when we had the discussions with the administration that was themselves, we'd turn it on, and people could use it from wherever. With the idea, it's going to be mostly their community. Yeah.
So Clem, just going back to your first slide, since Google couldn't do this, what makes you think anybody would trust the government to put their health information in?
Oh, Google. Yeah. No. Well, let me clarify. We're not trying to. I think we got a lot of chutzpah, I guess. No, I don't have. We're not going to top Google. We'd love to get 3 or 5, 10,000 people, and who'd use it for a while. And this may be a very select group. It may be the people who just really. We've had a lot of people say we want something like this. I just want to put in these few things. We get a sense they trust. Well, I think NLM, but we're not running it, so it'd be Suburban, and we'll see. That's all I can say. When I got to NLM, Dan says we should do a PHR, and I goes, well, we don't have a hospital. How could we do a PHR? Then I thought, why am I fighting this? I love doing this kind of stuff. So
You have to make it commercially relevant to them.
we don't have to make. We don't have to. Yeah, we don't have to make commercial grade.
Not really. They just have to create traffic. I mean, the history of PHR, standalone PHRs, is dismal.
Mm-hmm.
And, even integrated PHRs, the uptake is poor. So to think that, with...
Not portals. Portals can be very high. Look at Kaiser. They have millions of people using their
But they use it for their scheduling.
Well, no, I think
It's all the value-added stuff.
these questions are very apropos. But we don't need a big population, and we think this is a big country, and there's a lot of different kind of people, and I think there's got to be 5,000 people who might want to use this, but we'll find that out, or 10,000.
Could you restate, perhaps you did already, could you restate what do you get that's more than what you put in?
What, the person? Information from other sources, reminders. There's some other features, like you get reminded ahead. If you say your prescriptions run out, you got to do a 3-week thing for mail order. You get a pop-up for all those kind of things. You can set scheduling reminders on all your kind of clinical things. You put a drug in, and you can link out to lots of stuff about the drug information. You put it in, you can know what the doses are. You put in, you can know that this is the same as another drug. So you do get some, and there's probably about 160 reminder rules that do various things, but it's really dealing with about 15 preventive care actions, and we've got a stack this big more we could put in. It's just a matter of kind of getting the time and working through them. And these are non.
How about refills? How would?
Well, the refills we can't do because we're not. We don't offer that. We can't offer that service, but we can remind them it's time for you to get your mail order in, or however you'd happen to do it.
Make it easy for them to communicate.
We can't. The communication problem gets in all this authentication stuff, and until that gets solved by a larger force. Now, so, there's a couple ideas
So
we
it's
have.
So the government favors one hospital, or
Well, we can do
one pharmacy.
projects. We can do projects, but with one hospital. But you're right. No, the real problem is it's for the same for Google, and they have problems with these interfacing stuff. And you got to negotiate a special deal, and then the person has to go to Walgreens, sign up, get their password, go back home, put the 2 passwords in, lock them up. It's a pain in the ass. You know what I mean? So it's not a friendly environment. The stuff that's coming, if the CCR thing comes out, and I've actually had a peek at what some of the next proposals are. They're good in some ways, and we'll have to see how. I can't speak. They have to shoot me if I tell you that, or I'd shoot you, I guess. But the CCR, you could imagine a nice, clean, easy way. Someone gets out of the hospital, they give them a thumb drive. It's $2 or whatever the heck. They go home, stick it in their machine, they pull it in, and that is going to be reasonably standardized, so that you could actually do that. There's also a way to send HL7 messages out in RX in the direct version of this new form, and I can see how that could actually get done. And so what they would send it to would be the address of your PHR, and the address in your environment would be defined within this definition, this spec, and then inside the body of the message would be information identifying you. So, but to make this really work, hospitals have to register. I think to make it work easily, when you log in, you say, well, what's your favorite PHR, or where do you want your destination for your data? It might not be a PHR, something that was secure, and you give them that as your ID within that system. It could be pretty slick. So we're probably 2 years off. So we're sort of just preparing.
This open source so that people who are developing these things in commercial work could take components.
Absolutely.
Of that
This is open source once we get it tested one place. I think it's not just a pile of crummy. Pardon me?
How big is your development?
We got about 50 hours a week. No. No, there's about 5 people altogether. So it's enough to do it. It'd be more than enough if they weren't all government.
So it strikes me that you're.
Strike that.
But Clem, just a question. So there are perhaps 2 different reasons that PHRs might be useful. One is as a tool for patients. The other is as a tool for providers, because they don't have the patient's information. And in fact, some people said, well, it should be both maybe, and that would be fine. Now, where does this PHR fall on the spectrum?
It's very safely outside of anybody else's control except the patient's.
But I'm not talking about who controls it.
Well, the doctor can't look into it. They can carry this to them.
Okay.
Now, one of the interesting things in this survey was one of the things they really like to do is to carry a report to their patient, to their doctor. So there's currently a way to print out a PDF or print out a
I
PDF.
guess what I'm getting at is even with linked PHRs, some of the problems we haven't solved are the authentication of information. So if a patient's bringing you their record, you want to know what the source was and the timestamp, it wasn't altered, and blah, blah, blah. So you need to know that in order for me as a provider to really have a great deal of trust in it.
You're right. But in real life, patients do carry in lab results and X-ray reports on paper, and you read them and you believe. If they make sense, you believe them. I think we're in that state right now. We can't imagine asking that extra stuff to patients to type in, what's the name of the hospital and all that kind of stuff. But if we got it flowing in, it would come with the territory. It would come free. And I mean, we're actually anticipating that to make this really long-term viable, because people don't want to type in stuff. But if all you're saying, I want your vaccinations, your current drugs, the key kind of things, that woman that came in with her father would like that. And I had enough of them that, if they all used it, we'd be in good shape.
Can you accept or export data electronically?
We can export now as a spreadsheet.
As a spreadsheet?
And it's each of the tables we have is a separate worksheet.
It's marked, so it's human readable, it's not just a bunch of zeros.
Yeah.
But you can't accept data in, so I couldn't send you.
No, well, we can. We actually can. We can let you send in documents, and we'll store them. We have mixed feelings about those, because we may fill the whole world.
You're a library.
Yeah, right. No. So we have a tool where you download your stuff, but it's not coded. It's going to be the shoebox. You could link it to particular things if you wanted, but.
Will it be open to anybody in the country? I mean, when you
That's
talk about the relationships with the hospital.
Well, Suburban, when we knew, we were talking direct with the CEO and the CIO, We didn't say it that way. They said they're not going to restrict it to their institution. They can't because we're not connecting to them. And they'd be happy for the community, but we didn't define the community. And we won't know who they are anyway. We're not asking for a street address or anything. We're actually asking for very little. The only identifying information they have to put in is email address, and that's only because that's the only way they could recover their password if they forget their password.
What is the advantage of having the hospital?
It's a place to host it. They got all the HIPAA walls. They got all, they know how to do this stuff. So, it just feels good. No, I don't.
From a policy perspective.
Well, I don't know that actually, Microsoft isn't a HIPAA manager. Well, this place there was a Chinese delegation came when I was out of town to see stuff at NLM, and we have a Chinese. No, I'm not serious. We have a Chinese programmer. No, it was very. Well, what's funny about that?
You were telling us a joke.
No. This guy comes into the bar. Yeah, and one of the guys who were hosting them was from George Mason University, and he goes, "We want to do this. We want to do this tomorrow. We can set it up." And so that's our fallback. I don't want to do two at once, but that'd be our immediate fallback. And
To do it in China?
no, to do it at a university. It's in Virginia. It's on the.
From a personal perspective, I think the George Mason solution is better because
Really?
I think once you start wrapping that HIPAA wall around it, it's going to get all confused about who's responsible for the data that's in there.
Yeah, you made it right. Well, it turns out we went all the way up to OPR, Office of
Yeah, protection.
Protection. We talked to them and they wrote a white paper. Yeah, you're right. Well, anyway, we asked and they said, no, they're gonna, if it's inside their walls, they're responsible for all the rules and all the rest of this stuff.
Oh,
Even though no one can get to it except the patient, so they want a listing of everybody who accesses it. Well, it's going to be patient to patient, the patient to patient. Anyway. So you're right. We'll have to work through the thing. We think we can get through there were some barriers put up in our last discussion with the legal team, and I think we found a way to thread through it. But it's not as easy as you might have thought. You've done it, right? You guys, and you've done it. And I mean,
Well, it was a portal. It was.
well, you had the data, and it's coherent. So you had,
Yes.
Yeah, but
that's the medical record. It's clean.
So you just sort of wrapped the HIPAA.
Well, there's
It's their medical record data. It's,
medical record.
they don't.
Same as all other protections.
Well,
Did-
I don't think that all the my charts are inside the HIPAA.
Who's my chair?
My chart, Epics.
Epic.
You can implement
Really?
my charts portal outside of your
Oh, really?
hospitals.
And
It links to
do-
hospital data.
No, not if it links to hospital
It
data.
has to link to Epic. It can't be a standalone.
No, but you're gonna, it can be outside your firewall.
To leave it 5?
No, I actually have to. I have to a little longer. I got I changed it to 6.
Okay.
To fly. Thank you. Oh, because I'm screwed if I leave it 5. But, hey, Patty, why don't you get? It's time for your discussion or whatever.
React.
She's.
I was supposed to-
Yeah.